You are listening to Are You Ready Radio with Nick Pierce, the Barefoot Prepper. Find Are You Ready on Facebook and Instagram at Are You Ready Radio. You can also visit our home on the web. Just go to nickpiercemedia.com and click on the program's link. If you missed the live show, you can listen to the show's archives on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Podcasts, CastBox, Deezer, and many more, including our home on Spreaker. When a disaster happens, are you ready? Do you have the supplies you need to keep you and your family safe and survive? The Zombie Outpost store in Wilmington, Ohio, at Cedar Creek Flea Market stocks quality gear you need to be ready for the next emergency or even a camping trip. Visit zombieoutpoststore.com for location and hours. Check out our assortment of essentials you need when the next disaster happens. Go to zombieoutpoststore.com. Get 10% off at checkout when you mention Are You Ready Radio. Be ready and be prepared.
In this digital society, making connections is quickly becoming a lost art form. Yet, if you are a small business owner, building your network is the only way you can get ahead. Can these skills be learned? You bet they can. Read Nose to Nose Networking. No-nonsense, in-person networking tips from a master. Who's the master? Well, who better to teach networking and friend-building skills than a golden retriever? The author, Melanie Hope, takes the antics of Abigail and translates them into the human experience. Through Abby, you will learn how to set your intention, build a network, and get into and out of conversations with grace. If you love the Dog Abby segments on Counterculture-Wise Radio, you will love Nose to Nose Networking even more. Find it on Amazon and Barnes & Noble in hard copy, Kindle, and Nook. Visit counterculturewise.com for direct links.
Greetings and salutations, Counterculture-Wise listeners. This is Maximilian von Riegelbieser inviting you and yours to listen to me and mine. Join me, my sisters Abby and Fritzy, and my weekly guests, my father Jim and Mumsy Melanie, for Counterculture-Wise.
Max, it's not your show!
And we're not your guests, Max. We're the hosts. You may want to rein it in a little bit, buddy.
Very well. Tune in every Sunday at 6 p.m. Pacific at counterculturewise.com for our amazing live variety show. You can even chat with us. If you ask me, though, it should be called Counterculture Max.
Counterculture Wise! Radio with heart and mind.
Got a spare tire around that waist? Is your muffin top over the top? Do you binge eat uncontrollably? We are the government and we are here to help you. Here at our free FEMA weight loss camp, we have numerous ways to help you shed those unsightly, unwanted pounds. FEMA, or Fatties Eating Mitigated, automatically has a communist-style weight loss czar that specializes in centralized weight loss planning and communal extended fasting programs to shed that fat away in no time. Skin and boned means extra toned is the motto. Just remember, there is no way you can do it on your own. We will forcefully assist you into compliance. Failure is not an option in this utopian wonderland. How fantastic. Typical workout regimes include digging ditches and restocking them with dirt, building railways and more. Get life skills while you get lean. How do you join? Simple. Recite the Constitution in a public commons or violate the Patriot Act that includes simple misdemeanors. It's really that easy to get your own fenced-in slice of Americana. Stop being a fatty. The state is your daddy.
If you like what you are listening to, we appreciate your support. A small contribution from you, the listeners, can continue to help bring you such content and help keep things going here, even if it's just $1 a month. Keep in mind, though, in the spirit of prepping, we believe in redundancy, so it's better to have more than one, but every little bit helps pay the bills. Go to nickpiercemedia.com and click on the Support the Show link. You can make a one-time or monthly contribution in any dollar amount. And again, thank you for your support and listening. Are You Ready is an NP Media Group production and is the official broadcast of the Zombie Outpost in Wilmington, Ohio. The views and opinions expressed during this broadcast are those of the host and not that of the station, advertisers, or its affiliates. You are listening to Are You Ready Radio with Nick Pierce, the Barefoot Prepper. You never know when an emergency is going to happen. Disaster can strike at any time. Whether stuck on the road, riding out a power outage, escaping a natural disaster, or surviving a doomsday apocalypse, what would you do? No matter the scale, whether 1 hour or 1 year, will you survive? You're about to hear what it takes to be prepared. Now ask yourself, are you ready? Have you ever heard the term prepper? What comes to mind? Some of you may think it's a crazy guy with a bomb shelter and an old army truck parked on the front lawn. Well, prepper simply is a person who is ready for almost any emergency, small or large. It's no different than on a rainy day taking an umbrella with you when you leave your home or putting a coat on when it's cold outside. So maybe you think you're prepared for a brief time in that environment. But what if a few minutes turn into a day or even a year? I'm your host, Nick Pierce, the Barefoot Prepper, and I'm going to use my over 25 years of prepping and survival experience and knowledge in this program to help you and your family prepare to handle almost anything, from a small event, from a doomsday apocalypse. So get ready, because I'm prepared to enlighten you to seriously think, prepare, and answer the question, are you ready? And I want to hear anything you have to say about the subject, whatever you may have to offer. You see, it's important that we share our knowledge with each other, learn from each other, and help each other out. You see, the more prepared those around us are, the better your chances of survival will be when a disaster happens. Now, I'm sure everyone has heard the term zombies. Well, those are just those that are not prepared and come after whatever you have. Well, the call-in number is 513-815-6336 if you want to be a part of the show. Again, that's 513-815-6336. Also, check out our live chat room on Spreaker. That's Spreaker, Spreaker.com. Just go to the Are You Ready show, search it right there in the search bar. You can get there live through the website, nickpiercemedia.com. I post exclusive content on the home of Are You Ready on Facebook and on Instagram. Just go to Are You Ready Radio. You can interact with other members of the prepping community before, during, and after our broadcast. So share your knowledge. And again, if you want to call, the call-in number is 513-815-6336. If you've listened to these shows, you're probably wondering, wow, I live in an apartment. It sounds like for me to be a prepper or for me to prepare for anything, I need a lot of space and a bomb shelter and 10 years worth of MREs, water, and all that. And if you live in an apartment, where are you going to put any of your preps? You may be thinking there, how do you prepare? What do you stock up on, and where are you going to put all this gear that you need? Well, maybe you think you need a house in the country off-grid somewhere to prep. Well, you can still prep even in an apartment. I mean, face it, there's no reason not to prepare. So no matter where you are, you should. And you should always have a plan and be prepared. Preppers don't just live in the country. City prepping could be even more essential should the need for survival skills and gear really kick in. If you live in an apartment, you face it, you lack space. But there are many situations you can prepare for should the need ever occur, even if you live in an apartment. Now, indeed, the urban dwelling is dominated by larger populations per square foot, so the demand for emergency supplies is higher. Natural disasters such as floods, earthquakes, storms, and all that are likely to strain you temporarily, at least. So make sure that you're prepared with those survival items that you need for those situations, because you're going to count on them in an emergency. The trick to preparing in an apartment is really space. You want to use every bit of space efficiently. And you want to make just as much storage as possible, not just for your everyday stuff. Because face it, you can't live in a stockpile of water and rations and, your emergency preps. So you need to make it, there's a balance. You need to kind of make it so that your everyday stuff that you need in your everyday life is accessible to you. And you also have emergency supplies that you're going to need. So you want to first look at different storage options. One thing that I have found very handy are totes, if you can fit them under the bed. So in other words, you're not really stacking high, but you're really using a lot of open space or space that may be available that maybe you haven't thought of, such as back of closets, on the shelves in closets. And those very shallow totes come in very handy. To slide under the bed, and they have a lid. So even if you just have one or two of those with emergency supplies in them, it's out of the way, and easy to get to when you need it, and keep it organized. See, storage and organization are a big factor here, and you should always have your stuff organized anyway. Whether you live out in the country, whether you live in a home, whether you live like a big house, or even in an apartment, or even studio apartment. I lived in a studio apartment. I know. It's a bit of a challenge. So I'm really going to share what I've learned over my years living in an apartment life with you to help you look at other options. And if you're doing this stuff, great. Our chat room is open. So chime in. Let me know what ideas you have. Hit us up in the chat room. Again, the chat room is Spreaker, Spreaker. And I'd love to hear some of your ideas. Storage is really the most important thing, really. And when it comes to storage, you may also want storage options that double as furniture. Okay? Yes, everybody wants a very pretty coffee table. If there's no room to store anything in it, it really doesn't belong in the apartment. So even if you were not putting an emergency kit together, for everyday items, you want as much storage as possible in an apartment. Well, look around. If you live in an apartment, or even your home, maybe you live in a small home and you're kind of really outgrowing it. You got a lot of stuff and you're trying to figure out, where do I put all this? Well, take a look around at available space. Maybe there's a shabby coffee table, or maybe there's a shabby end table somewhere that you want to get a new one anyway. Maybe you're in an apartment and you have an end table. The only thing it's doing is holding a lamp up off the floor. No storage. Now there's room underneath it. That's a plus. Do you have anything stored underneath there yet? Well, some of you may be thinking, it's like, we'll just put more totes underneath the only good spot that we have company over in, and we're just going to put an eyesore there. Well, there are many ways to disguise storage, and there's also storage options that are very practical that can become furniture. For example, I have a road case that I've used as a coffee table. And in that road case is nothing but sleeping gear for camping. And I should find a picture of it. I'm going to find a picture of it. I'm going to post it. So if you go to our Facebook or Instagram, I'm going to take some, see if I can find some of these pictures and put them up there to give you guys some ideas. And it's a funky looking coffee table. And it's actually a road case. It just totally fits with the vibe that I have. If not, I'll just take some pictures. What else? Totes. I mentioned totes. Buckets. Now, you may be thinking of a 5-gallon bucket. It's like, no one wants this blue or orange bucket laying around in the middle of the room. Well, no. But if you put if you put a tablecloth over it, it could become a coffee table or an end table. You can put the lamp on that, and inside has all your emergency preps. Remember, think storage. And if your storage can be furniture, well, you kind of killed two birds with one stone. And only is it very practical. It's probably more affordable than some furniture. And it's amazing what you could dress up with a tapestry, even a sheet. So explore some of those options. Now, when I mentioned the 5-gallon bucket, though, I know that most people would be thinking of those big round buckets. think square, because you can stack more or line them up, side by side, and if they're square, you're going to fit a lot more in their space than you would in a round bucket, because in between the round buckets you have a lot of empty space that even though you think, oh, it's just an inch, well, an inch here, an inch there, and all those little inches add up when you're talking about a very small footprint when it comes to square footage. So you want to maximize your footprint, so stay away from round storage and think square. Rectangular, you know what I mean. And if you think about it, even buckets in an emergency, I don't know if you remember the last broadcast when we were talking about your safe room, or if your plumbing's down, they could also double as a toilet if you really need it. Make sure it has a lid. Go back and listen to that episode and make sure you check out the part about the sanitation and how to make a pool noodle potty. In fact, what we can do is, right now, during this quick break that we have coming up right now, take a look around at least one of your rooms. Look at some of the furniture or look at some empty space, especially if you live in an apartment right now. Take a look around and see what options you have or space that may be available that you're not using that could be put to better use, especially if you don't have any gear yet or any emergency preps. I'm Nick Pierce, the Barefoot Prepper. Stick around. We're coming right back. Brief. Find Are You Ready on Facebook and Instagram at Are You Ready Radio. You can also visit our home on the web. Just go to nickpiercemedia.com and click on the program's link. If you missed the live show, you can listen to the show's archives on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Podcasts, CastBox, Deezer, and many more, including our home on Spreaker.
When a disaster happens, are you ready? Do you have the supplies you need to keep you and your family safe and survive? The Zombie Outpost store in Wilmington, Ohio, at Cedar Creek Flea Market, stocks quality gear you need to be ready for the next emergency or even a camping trip. Visit zombieoutpoststore.com for location and hours. Check out our assortment of essentials you need when the next disaster happens. Go to zombieoutpoststore.com. Get 10% off at checkout when you mention Are You Ready Radio. Be ready and be prepared.
If you like what you are listening to, we appreciate your support. A small contribution from you, the listeners, can continue to help bring you such content and help keep things going here, even if it's just $1 a month. Keep in mind, though, in the spirit of prepping, we believe in redundancy, so it's better to have more than one, but every little bit helps pay the bills. Go to nickpiercemedia.com and click on the Support the Show link. You can make a one-time or monthly contribution in any dollar amount. And again, thank you for your support and listening. You are listening to Are You Ready Radio with Nick Pierce, the Barefoot Prepper. And welcome back. I'm Nick Pierce, the Barefoot Prepper. You're listening to Are You Ready Radio, and on this episode we're talking about prepping in your apartment. If you live in an apartment, live in a very small house, and maybe you live in an RV, camper, maybe you got one of those school bus homes. It's space is limited. It could be very cramped already, and there's not a lot of room for extra stuff. Never mind some of the everyday life stuff that you need. Well, during this past break, hopefully you had a look around your home and maybe came up with at least one spot to put a container, a bucket, or something. Maybe replace a piece of furniture with something that's capable of storing a lot of stuff. And now it's time to talk about what to put in there. Well, before we do that, first, the next thing you need to do is take a look around. Do you have a fire extinguisher? You're going to want one. Regardless, this is one of those everyday items living in an apartment that you should have, and even your home, you should always have a fire extinguisher. And I always recommend, now there's two things. First of all, yes, the fire extinguisher, but also baking soda. I always keep baking soda not in the cabinet above the stove, but in a cabinet on the other side of the kitchen, not too far from the stove. And you want to think about doing that with your fire extinguisher as well. Yes, you want it to be in an area of your home that, we'll say, has an appliance or, something that's most likely to catch on fire. And you want it fairly close to that. Again, if you don't want to store it in the cabinet above the stove because you're not going to want to reach through flames to get it. So having it nearby is your best bet. It also helps, especially in an apartment, the chances of you having a very big fire right off the bat are going to be kind of slim. Most fires start with like a small smoldering somewhere in a small area because you don't have a lot of space to begin with. Most fire extinguishers should take care of that before you need to call the fire department. Some fires can be handled with just a simple cup of water if you catch them soon enough. And, of course, it depends on the magnitude of the fire and what's burning. We spoke in a previous episode about, preparing for bad weather, if you listen to last week's show, where we spoke about knowing where the main breaker is. Does your apartment have its own breaker? Knowing what the limitations are on your apartment breakers, because you may not be looking at a 200-amp service if you have a small studio apartment or even just a one-bedroom or two-bedroom apartment. So, make sure the place is safe, too, to prevent fires, especially electrical fires or anything like that from happening. And I always say baking soda in addition to the fire extinguisher, because if you have a grease fire or anything like that on the stove, of course, you put water on it, it flares up and makes it worse. The last thing you want to do in your home, or even a small apartment for that matter, is discharge a fire extinguisher. And, of course, some fire extinguishers are just simple, just water, but for an apartment, or even your home, you want to get a type A, B, and C fire extinguisher. It's good for 3 different types of fires, different materials that are burning, and you want to make sure that it's worth putting the money into a good, decent fire extinguisher that does all 3 types. But, of course, you never want to discharge that unless you absolutely have to. And, of course, know how to use it. The other thing you do before you start stockpiling gear in there is don't tell anybody you're stockpiling gear. Now, this is kind of a basic rule of prepping, especially, though, in an urban environment and where population is so dense. It's really hard to tell who's your friend, who they're going to tell anything to when it comes to what you have. And it's okay to share. But don't announce what you have, because it just makes you a target. And, depending on the city that you live in, most cities, they have strict rules when it comes to self-defense and weapons and stuff like that. And, you're going to have to defend what you have, and you don't want to be a target. So don't talk to anybody about what you're about to learn or do now. So did you find a place to put a bucket at least, or at least a tote? Good. Now, of course, prepping, it's time to fill it up. And it may not be necessary to fill it up. But the first few things I want you to look at now that you have your space to put at least one bucket or tote, you'll eventually go out and get the bucket or tote if you don't have one already. Maybe you're looking at an empty one. Maybe just like, boy, I've been talking about this thing long enough. I know what I'm doing now. I was able to clean out a whole tote. Good. And you have space for it. And you have your fire extinguisher, or you're going to get one. Now let's put some stuff in there. In apartment life, again, space is limited. So you want to start off with the very basic essentials that you're going to need. Set aside a couple rolls of toilet paper. Set aside a roll or two of paper towels. Okay, that just stays in your emergency supplies. Then you want to set aside, or if you don't have any, you may want to get some, a flashlight. Get at least one flashlight and batteries for the flashlight. Well, now you're covered for a power outage in the dark. You're covered for if you can't get to the store because of civil unrest or whatever event happens and you can't get to the stores. You're in a densely populated area if you live in an apartment in most cases. So you have a lot of demand for the supplies that the stores have. So if you have one store on the corner and a couple thousand people that live on that block, say in an area like Manhattan, they don't have 1,000 packages of toilet paper sitting there in that bodega. So just keep that in mind. And put some aside. Same thing with some paper towels, flashlight batteries. Now, don't buy a flashlight that takes a different type of battery than, we'll say, any other flashlight you may have just to have in your emergency gear. Batteries don't last forever. They do expire. They lose their strength after a while. They become weaker even if they're fresh or, fresh out of the package, not necessarily new. They, with age, they'll go bad, they'll rupture, they'll crack and leak and a lot of other things. So you want to make sure that if you have, we'll say, a clock and some other stuff at home that uses, we'll say, AA's, that you go out and buy a flashlight that takes AA batteries. Now, solar is great. Crank, one of those Crank emergency radio flashlight, think multitaskers. It's a flashlight lantern. It charges by solar. It charges your phone. It hand cranks. It's AM, it's FM, it's weather band, and sometimes more. So because space is limited, you want to find things that are multi-use, multitaskers, and not necessarily just single-function things. So maybe the flashlight in your emergency kit may be slightly different. Maybe it doesn't take batteries at all because it has a built-in battery that can charge via solar, charge via USB port, and charge by hand cranking it. So if you listen to the past episode, I've mentioned Kato radios. Those seem to be the best. And they make smaller compact versions that are good just to fit in your backpack. But again, small for apartment life. Minimum storage, take up very little room, very lightweight, very compact. And you don't need a 3,000 lumen LED monster light just to really navigate your way around in the dark. Now take a quick look around your home right now. Some of this stuff that I've mentioned you already have. You may have it. Some stuff, of course, we're going to talk about. You may not. Maybe you never thought of it. So see what you have. Some of this, like I said, it may be scattered out. It's not all in one place. If you need your flashlight right now or the fire extinguisher, if you had a grease fire, would you know where to go to get it? Again, little things like that. So far, this is not costing any money yet until you go out to buy a container to put your stuff in. But keep it all in one place. Actually, that music means you have time to do that right now. Yeah, we're getting interrupted again. Yeah, go take care of that real quick. Go take a look around. It's better than listening to the commercials. And we'll be right back after this short break.
Find Are You Ready on Facebook and Instagram at Are You Ready Radio. You can also visit our home on the web. Just go to nickpiercemedia.com and click on the program's link. If you missed the live show, you can listen to the show's archives on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Podcasts, CastBox, Deezer, and many more, including our home on Spreaker.
When a disaster happens, are you ready? Do you have the supplies you need to keep you and your family safe and survive? The Zombie Outpost store in Wilmington, Ohio, at Cedar Creek Flea Market stocks quality gear you need to be ready for the next emergency or even a camping trip. Visit zombieoutpoststore.com for location and hours. Check out our assortment of essentials you need when the next disaster happens. Go to zombieoutpoststore.com. Get 10% off at checkout when you mention Are You Ready Radio. Be ready and be prepared.
In this digital society, making connections is quickly becoming a lost art form. Yet, if you are a small business owner, building your network is the only way you can get ahead. Can these skills be learned? You bet they can. Read Nose to Nose Networking. No nonsense, in-person networking tips from a master. Who's the master? Well, who better to teach networking and friend building skills than a golden retriever? The author, Melanie Hope, takes the antics of Abigail and translates them into the human experience. Through Abby, you will learn how to set your intention, build a network, and get into and out of conversations with grace. If you love the Dog Abby segments on Counterculture-Wise Radio, you will love Nose to Nose Networking even more. Find it on Amazon and Barnes & Noble in hard copy, Kindle, and Nook. Visit counterculturewise.com for direct links.
Greetings and salutations, Counterculture-Wise listeners. This is Maximilian von Riegelbieser inviting you and yours to listen to me and mine. Join me, my sisters Abby and Fritzy, and my weekly guests, my father Jim and Mumsy Melanie, for Counterculture-Wise.
Max, it's not your show.
And we're not your guests, Max. We're the hosts. You may want to rein it in a little bit, buddy.
Very well. Tune in every Sunday at 6 p.m. Pacific at counterculturewise.com for our amazing live variety show. You can even chat with us. If you ask me, though, it should be called Counterculture Max.
Counterculture-Wise. Radio with heart and mind.
Got a spare tire around that waist? Is your muffin top over the top? Do you binge eat uncontrollably? We are the government and we are here to help you. Here at our free FEMA weight loss camp, we have numerous ways to help you shed those unsightly, unwanted pounds. FEMA, or Fatties Eating Mitigated, automatically has a communist-style weight loss czar that specializes in centralized weight loss planning and communal extended fasting programs to shed that fat away in no time. Skin and boned means extra toned is the motto. Just remember, there is no way you can do it on your own. We will forcefully assist you into compliance. Failure is not an option in this utopian wonderland. How fantastic. Typical workout regimes include digging ditches and restocking them with dirt, building railways and more. Get life skills while you get lean. How do you join? Simple. Recite the Constitution in a public commons or violate the Patriot Act that includes simple misdemeanors. It's really that easy to get your own fenced-in slice of Americana. Stop being a fatty. The state is your daddy.
If you like what you are listening to, we appreciate your support. A small contribution from you, the listeners, can continue to help bring you such content and help keep things going here, even if it's just $1 a month. Keep in mind, though, in the spirit of prepping, we believe in redundancy, so it's better to have more than one, but every little bit helps pay the bills. Go to nickpiercemedia.com and click on the Support the Show link. You can make a one-time or monthly contribution in any dollar amount. And again, thank you for your support and listening. You are listening to Are You Ready Radio with Nick Pierce, the Barefoot Prepper. And welcome back, everyone. I'm Nick Pierce, the Barefoot Prepper. You are listening to Are You Ready? Thank you, everybody, for tuning in this evening. And if you're listening to it on the replay platform, thank you for finding us. This week, we are talking about apartment life prepping. So if you live in a small space, maybe it's not an apartment, maybe it's a little teeny tiny home, little house, maybe dollhouse, I don't know, playhouse, or a camper, RV. You know, it presents its own unique sets of challenges, and typically it's mostly about storage. Storage always seems to be the big thing that it all comes down to, space and, of course, money. But like I said, some of the stuff you may already have laying around. So, actually, my next item really is the food and water part. On my list anyway. I know there's many lists out there. A lot of websites publish lists. They have certain priorities, a certain order, certain reasons why things are first and second and all that. But
I know this is kind of odd because you're like, well, you always say to gather my gear first before I buy a bag or anything like that. Well, bags are one thing. You're limited on space in your apartment. So, yes, you want to get at least one container to keep your emergency gear in. So, in a way, you're fitting everything into what you can. You're not buying something to put all your gear in. You know, it's kind of funny. Like when I first moved into my very, very first apartment, and I figured, okay, obviously I'm going to need a couple things because I'm going into 4 walls plus a kitchen. There's another 4 walls in there. You know, the bathroom, there's another 4 walls in there, but you know what I'm saying. And there's nothing. It's not like when I lived at home with Mommy and Daddy. And, you know, if you need a can opener, you just went to the kitchen, it was there. If you need a garbage bag, it was under the sink. If you needed a pot, it was in that cabinet. If you needed salt and pepper, it was over there. And you need some butter, it was in the butter tray of the refrigerator. Toilet backed up, the plunger was right there. You don't have any of that. So you're starting from scratch. Well, think of it in the same way. When I went out to the store to buy stuff that I needed, I really didn't have a place to put it all. Because I know what I needed. And then I get home to my new little apartment at the time, many, many, many years ago, and I'm like, well, I got everything I need. Oh, there's no place to put half this stuff. I was thinking in terms of the space that I had at home, or, you know, when I grew up, or not in a little apartment, my very first one. So you don't want to do that with your gear when it comes to prepping. Of course, by the end of this episode, you're going to have a clear list of what you need. But buying the gear first and then buying a pack or anything to put it in to carry with you is different than this scenario. Your space is going to dictate how much you can actually store. And the most efficiently you use that space, that'll dictate how much stuff you can also store. So, next on my list is the food and water. Now, yes, cases of the bottled water are great when you have space. If you get the jugs of water, again, get away from anything that's round, square. You can fit more in a limited amount of space that you have than you could with anything round. So it may be worth an extra few cents for a gallon or 2 liter, whatever you find them in, of square jugs of water than, we'll say, $2 for, 24 bottles of the round water. Because you're taking up more space that way and you're not storing as much. Now, of course, the bottles in the case of water in the flat that you get them in, of course, those stack. Well, you can also do that with regular water in the square jugs as well. A simple piece of cardboard in between them to make a solid foundation, to balance it out, to stack stuff on top of that works well too. When it comes to food, now, the plastic heavy-duty tote or the buckets are great for this as well, because one thing that you have in heavily and densely populated areas is, face it, you have rats, you have mice, you have roaches. And if you have something like a 5-gallon bucket, square bucket, that has a lid that seals, it's going to keep the vermin away. They're not going to be able to get into it. So, I mean, yes, okay, there's the argument, a rat and a mouse will chew through anything, roaches can slide into the smallest crevices. Typically, they're not going to get into a 5-gallon sealed bucket. It takes a lot for them to chew before they get anywhere, and it takes, roaches really can't, when they're sealed, get in to something sealed that tight. So keep that in mind when it comes to storing your food, especially if it's just in packages. So stock up on a lot of non-perishable dry food, canned food. And, the dry food is going to be very valuable to you and canned for long term as well. You want to find dry food that only require very little water and
take any of the dried up stuff. You want to find packets like that require minimal like cooking, because you want to conserve as much fuel, which we'll get to that in a second, and as much of your water that you have stored when it comes to cooking those. And this is kind of true when it comes to any food storage. But in a home where you have more space, you have the luxury of having more options. So actually, I will get to my kitchen tip of the week. Prepping kitchen tip of the week right now, because I'm going to touch on something. Burp, 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 burpy, burp, 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 burpy, burp, 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 burpy, burp, 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 burpy, burp, burp. All right, so when it comes to apartment prepping, and if there's any disruption in your service for either gas, if you have it, or your electric, your stove is, if it's not available, you need to cook, we'll say. Of course, you don't have the backyard option of a fire pit, a, grill and stuff, unless you have like a terrace that you can have grills on. But, we're talking, we'll say, larger apartment complexes, cities, heavy populated areas, where, or even small apartment complexes, just in the suburbs. A lot of them you can't have grills. Some of them require an electric grill. You can't have an open flame grill. You can't have charcoal. You can only use gas. There's a number of variables involved. Some may have community grills in public areas and common areas in the complex. So you really don't have an alternate cooking method, or do you? Well, backpacking stoves or camp stoves, just like we'll say a single burner butane portable stove, or even a double burner propane stove, those will work fine. And if you live in an apartment, and even if you have like a terrace, a balcony, a deck, or something, because keep in mind with these are made for outdoor use. These are not made for in-house use. So they do emit carbon monoxide. They're not vented or anything like that, and they function a little differently. So if you can find a place outside somewhere that you can set it up on, that's better. But even if you can just open up a window and use it on the windowsill, you will have a way to not only cook your food, but also if you need to boil water to drink. So maybe if your water's running, but there's a boil water advisory, but your electric or gas for your stove is not working, you have another option there to be able to boil water and cook your food. Again, of course, it's only helpful when you have fuel for it. So make sure you keep a couple little propane tanks if it's a propane stove, or butane if it's a butane stove. Whatever the appropriate fuel is, make sure that you keep it with the stove. And of course, the more compact and the smaller, especially in the apartment world, all the better. And while we're in the kitchen, I'd like to mention, a couple episodes ago, I spoke about your survival garden. Grow some herbs. In an apartment, you can actually have a little herb garden. You could grow a lot of things in an apartment if you have the space for it. But if you grow your own herbs, you could easily grow those on a windowsill right in your kitchen, if your kitchen has a window, or any place where there's sunlight coming in. It makes mealtime much more palatable, and if you're surviving on a diet of dehydrated food stuff, and especially canned food, it really elevate your meal, make it a lot more interesting, and so that's that. Let's see. On my list, I also want to mention, speaking of food items, again, you can get a lot of square, rectangular tins of food if you like what's in them. Again, that'll save you space. Just a quick thought on that one before I forgot. I was thinking of it during the Prepper Kitchen segment while I was talking. We spoke about batteries, but an alternative power source. Again, it could go back to that crank flashlight that also charges your mobile device. But if you can get those little mini pocket solar panels or backup battery chargers, those are great. You can, like I said, the crank radios are perfect for those. If the grid goes down, you need to know what's going on anyway. But, if you don't have access, or, they could be a little pricey, I understand. Maybe your budget is an issue. but at least invest in some backup power device to at least keep your mobile device charged, because if that's still working, you may be able to listen to radio channels, you may be able to get news on the internet and all that to keep you up to speed with what's going on, and especially as emergencies develop, and especially post-disaster. So you don't have to pay through your nose. Go to your local store, see what you can find to charge your phone. Solar chargers, in my opinion, are kind of up there along with the crank radio. Because, let's face it, in an apartment, you're not going to have room, or you're not going to be able to run a generator, especially a gas-powered generator. And you really don't have the option of rewiring your apartment to put in solar power backups or generator backups. So you're going to have to think, of just simple things that you can use to at least keep your small devices charged, at least temporarily, and be able to recharge the backup power as well. So, again, solar does seem to be the best bet when it comes to that. And don't really count on it to really provide much light. Stockpile up on candles. If electricity becomes scarce, you're going to want to conserve it anyway when you're down to your power backup. So don't keep turning your phone on, especially at night, so you can, we'll say, get ready, brush your teeth, maybe brush your hair. You're still living at home. You're not out in the wilderness. So you're going to have, you're going to maintain yourself as well as maintain your living area, because you want to keep that clean as well. So when it gets dark, it's going to be a lot easier if you just have a candle that can burn, at least just in one room. It gives you plenty of light. It's enough light to see what you're doing and get by. And honestly, the warm glow of a candle could be pretty good for your morale. So you can also get like hurricane lamps that'll help protect the flame. Those lanterns, like the kerosene, or you can put lighter fluid in them, like lamp fluid and all that. Those are very handy. It keeps the flame, from being exposed. Of course, you still have a flame. But those oil lamps, kerosene lamps, and of course, with those, don't forget the fuel either. You want to make sure you have plenty of fuel for those, and of course, things that go along with it, like extra wicks. And, of course, don't forget matches and lighters. Candles, oil lamps, and all that are of no use if you don't have a way to light them. So, not too many of you are going to sit there with your survival kit and your ferro rod and all that. So, some folks really overlook that. They have like a gas stove, or they don't have any gas appliances. They don't have to worry about their hot water heaters and all that in an apartment sometimes. So you really overlook the fact that maybe you have to light a pilot light, especially if you don't smoke or you don't burn incense, or you normally don't have candles around. So don't forget your matches. And, of course, lighters. Matches are a lot easier to light lanterns with, and lighters, depending on the candle, if it's in a standard base or something like that, like a jar candle, sometimes lighters could be a little difficult, especially when they burn down too far. So matches, to me, work a little better. And, keep them with your candles and your lanterns if you get them. This way you're not, again, looking around for all these components. Remember, you're making a little emergency kit to have for when something happens. Oh, one thing I don't think I mentioned. I think I forgot to mention this when I was talking about the water. Water filter. And, of course, I mentioned water again when we were talking about the kitchen, our prepping kitchen segment. But a lot of times people overlook the water purification end of it, because you think you're in a city and, you have your bottled water and everything will come back soon, and it may. But long term, once you collect water, the water quality may have been compromised, such as that Boil Water Advisor, I was using as an example earlier. Having some sort of water filter is great, because you may be limited on your fuel, because don't forget, space is your main problem there. So a small compact water filter, like a water straw, like the Aquamarine Life straws, all that. It's very small, compact. Keep it in with maybe in your bucket there, or your tote, whatever that you're building, and use it when, maybe as an alternative to using fuel to boil water, if your water supply starts to get low.
And, of course, along with the water filters, the water straw, and all that, I'll be happy to grace you with my rant about water purification tablets. Now, water purification tablets, some people say, but I have water purification tablets. It's a lot smaller, they're more compact. They also go bad, expire, and you don't use them every day. See, again, it goes back to anything that's expendable, anything that's, has an expiration date on it, especially water purification tablets. They're not going to do what they're supposed to do after they expire. So you don't want to mess around with your water. You'll be making a lot of trips to your bathroom if you don't do this right. In some cases, it could kill you. So the water purification tablet thing, I don't believe in them unless you're in an area of the country, and you probably heard me rant and say this before, unless you're in a country somewhere, an area of the country where you need to use those every day for every cup, glass, jug of water that you consume. Because you don't, you go to your pantry and you say, okay, you eat stuff that's been in there longer, you rotate the stock of your food in there, so you don't have a can of corn sitting there for 12 years. You've eaten that already, and you have corn that's good for another 5 years, or 3 years, or 10 years, whatever it is. You rotate your food supply, just like you're going to rotate your water supply. You don't just put stuff aside and say, we're only going to eat that for emergencies because it's going to go bad. It's not going to taste as good. And it's just going to eventually expire and possibly make you sick. Well, water purification tablets are this one thing that only purifies water that you may never, ever use. You're not going to even remember you have them until during an emergency, and you're like, oh, wow, I remember I bought these like 3 decades ago. They expired like 5 administrations ago. So you don't sit there every day and say, oh, we should probably eat up some of those water purification tablets before they go bad, and I'll get more at the store tomorrow. Well, they're not cheap, number one. They don't really get rid of a lot of the impurities in the water. They make it safe to drink. And, you still may want to strain or filter the water anyway. So you may just as well just get a water straw or one of those life straws, water filters, something that will take the contaminants out of the water straight from whatever the source is or whatever you have it stored in, should the water supply be compromised. And don't count on the water purification tablets being good unless you need those almost every day. Well, of course, there's always a rant about water purification tablets anytime water comes up. Now, one of the other items, a lot of times you'll hear people say, make sure you have extra blankets. Have extra blankets and quilts. In a home, maybe if you have space for that, that's great. And in your apartment, you're lucky if you have room for a second set of sheets. So, sleeping bags are a much better option for this. They're a lot more effective, and they're more compact than regular blankets. So, if you can stuff, we'll say something the size of a quilt into a little tiny stuff sack and get like one of those compression bags with the straps so you can tighten down even further once you do get it stuffed in there, you're going to save a lot of space. Now, if you have an EDC kit, like maybe a small little personal survival kit that you travel with every day, or a little first aid kit, you may have what's called a Mylar bag. The Mylar blankets. They make Mylar sleeping bags as well, and like they call them like tack bivvies or just a bivvy in general. Those are very compact. They keep you very warm, which are great on the move because they're very lightweight and very small. But at home, you may not want to sit in a Mylar bag until your power comes out in the middle of the winter. You are going to want some comfort, and if you have room for it, a sleeping bag may be a better option. They'll keep you a lot warmer than a regular blanket or quilt in most cases. And if you really don't have room for a sleeping bag, then by all means, get a tack bivvy or one of those bivvies, a Mylar bag, Mylar sleeping bag, or even just a Mylar blanket that you can get under. And I always recommend that it's in your EDC kit, your everyday carry. If you have a vehicle, like I said, you probably heard me mention this before, I always keep 6 of them in my vehicle to cover over windows should I get stuck in extreme temperatures and I'm not able to move or run the engine to stay warm. So
you should have them. If you don't have room for a sleeping bag or extra blankets, definitely use them. Get some extras to keep just in that little kit in your apartment, in your little tote. And so far, we barely filled up most of that bucket so far. So again, hopefully you have extra space. But when you have the extra space, that's when you put it into some of the food storage and all that. Which I would always recommend at least keeping 2 to 3 weeks of food on hand, even in an apartment, that you would normally eat anyway. So a lot of dried food, canned food, and all that, you should have a good supply of that to begin with. And of course, if you do store some in your bucket in your emergency kit, don't forget to cycle through that. Same thing with your water. You also want to get yourself a toolkit. All homes should have at least a simple toolkit like screwdrivers, hammers, nails, screws, not only for repairs, but it could also save your life, and you can use it for self-defense. Should there be a break-in, and maybe you're in a home or a city that you don't own firearms. Maybe there are laws and regulations that prevent you from owning firearms. But that music means that we're coming up to our top of the hour break. I'm Nick Pierce, the Barefoot Prepper. You're listening to Are You Ready Radio. More to come here in just a moment. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Find Are You Ready on Facebook and Instagram at Are You Ready Radio. You can also visit our home on the web. Just go to nickpiercemedia.com and click on the program's link. If you missed the live show, you can listen to the show's archives on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Podcasts, CastBox, Deezer, and many more, including our home on Spreaker.
When a disaster happens, are you ready? Do you have the supplies you need to keep you and your family safe and survive? The Zombie Outpost store in Wilmington, Ohio, at Cedar Creek Flea Market stocks quality gear you need to be ready for the next emergency or even a camping trip. Visit zombieoutpoststore.com for location and hours. Check out our assortment of essentials you need when the next disaster happens. Go to zombieoutpoststore.com. Get 10% off at checkout when you mention Are You Ready Radio. Be ready and be prepared.
In this digital society, making connections is quickly becoming a lost art form. Yet, if you are a small business owner, building your network is the only way you can get ahead. Can these skills be learned? You bet they can. Read Nose to Nose Networking. No-nonsense, in-person networking tips from a master. Who's the master? Well, who better to teach networking and friend-building skills than a golden retriever? The author, Melanie Hope, takes the antics of Abigail and translates them into the human experience. Through Abby, you will learn how to set your intention, build a network, and get into and out of conversations with grace. If you love the Dog Abby segments on Counterculture-Wise Radio, you will love Nose to Nose Networking even more. Find it on Amazon and Barnes & Noble in hard copy, Kindle, and Nook. Visit counterculturewise.com for direct links.
Hey, how you doing? This is Magic Pierce inviting you and yours to listen to some good friends of mine that have a show too. Did you really think my daddy is the only one that just runs his mouth all the time and that's the only thing I listen to? No, it's not. I got a show I listen to on Sundays. Join host Max and his co-host, my hottie Fritzy, and of course my good friend Abby on Counterculture-Wise, Sundays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 Eastern. They have their own human guests, Melanie and Jim, each week. They don't meow a lot, but you get what they're saying. Now let me tell you, you have to go to counterculturewise.com. Use your paws to play with the mouse and scroll down to the on-the-air button on the right to hear their show. Just click on that. After that, watch them on Periscope like I do. Daddy gives me a little mouse to play with, and I get farts the whole time. It's a great show. Check it out. Counterculturewise.com. If you don't tune in, I get cuckoos on you.
Thank you so much for that ringing endorsement, Magic. It warms the orange hearts of me and Abby and the gray heart of Fritzy to hear you say such amazing things about our show. I'm pretty sure that Mumsy and Father have pink hearts, so we will assume their hearts are warmed too.
Forget about it. I got you guys. Good peoples.
Got a spare tire around that waist? Is your muffin top over the top? Do you binge eat uncontrollably? We are the government and we are here to help you. Here at our free FEMA weight loss camp, we have numerous ways to help you shed those unsightly, unwanted pounds. FEMA, or Fatties Eating Mitigated, automatically has a communist-style weight loss czar that specializes in centralized weight loss planning and communal extended fasting programs to shed that fat away in no time. Skin and boned means extra tone is the motto. Just remember, there is no way you can do it on your own. We will forcefully assist you into compliance. Failure is not an option in this utopian wonderland. How fantastic. Typical workout regimes include digging ditches and restocking them with dirt, building railways and more. Get life skills while you get lean. How do you join? Simple. Recite the Constitution in a public commons, or violate the Patriot Act that includes simple misdemeanors. It's really that easy to get your own fenced-in slice of Americana. Stop being a fatty. The state is your daddy.
If you like what you are listening to, we appreciate your support. A small contribution from you, the listeners, can continue to help bring you such content and help keep things going here, even if it's just $1 a month. Keep in mind, though, in the spirit of prepping, we believe in redundancy, so it's better to have more than one, but every little bit helps pay the bills. Go to nickpiercemedia.com and click on the Support the Show link. You can make a one-time or monthly contribution in any dollar amount. And again, thank you for your support and listening. You are listening to Are You Ready Radio with Nick Pierce, the Barefoot Prepper. All right, and we're back. Are You Ready Radio? I'm Nick Pierce, the Barefoot Prepper. On this episode, we are speaking about, apartment prepping. Prepping in a little tiny space. So if you live in an apartment, maybe a dollhouse, little tiny playhouse, a wee little tiny little place to live, this is the episode for you, because you're probably trying to figure out, wow, I want to be a doomsday prepper, but I don't have room. Well, really, it doesn't take a lot of room, and that's what this episode's primarily about. So, before the break, we're so rudely interrupted by those commercials and that music. That's okay. We got to pay the bills. That's how we do it. But I was talking about a toolkit, so making sure that you have certain things like screwdrivers, hammers, screws, nails, pliers, a wrench. You know, it could be very handy, not just for the purposes of repairing and small maintenance in your home, but to, use for personal protection, self-defense. And also when it comes to it, over the past few years, there's been a lot of this civil unrest, especially in major cities. So you want to check your security. So in an emergency situation, you really want to ensure that your property is secure. You want to have extra locks on your doors and windows. Make your home as difficult for unwanted guests to enter. Make it as difficult as possible. And one thing that, it's kind of rough in an apartment because it's like, well, you're kind of limited on what you can do. Of course, maintenance or the building management may need to get in for emergencies, so there's not a lot you can really do to ensure that they don't come in, which is why you also want to keep everything kind of out of sight as well. You don't want people to know what you have. But you can consider maybe adding an extra door, like a front door or something, or gate or something in your doorway that you can close should a situation arise. Same thing with windows. Maybe having a way to barricade your windows, at least even if it's from the inside. That'll help keep unwanted folks from entering your home. They can easily be done. Again, this is not something that really needs to be practical up to code. It's internal. Of course, you have to check and make sure that when you're attaching or making modifications to the structure, the building's okay with it, if you think there could be a concern for it. But at least if you have, we'll say, a chain on your door at least, like a deadbolt or something that you can engage when a situation occurs that maybe you're not going to use every day, so that, of course, your building management, landlord, maintenance, whoever may need to get in an emergency if you're not home, you don't want to lock them out. And that could also get you in trouble. But having anything to slow down an intruder, to give you more time to either get away or get ready to defend your apartment and your stuff, the better. Now, of course, along with securing yourself in, you're also going to want to have an escape plan. So have an escape plan if you can't use your door for windows. Now, a lot of times, folks, it's like, well, I'm on the second, I'm on a third floor, they may be on a 20th floor. What's the plan? Now, most apartment buildings, like especially high-rise apartments, have fire escapes. You have to get to the stairs somehow. It's very difficult to leave an apartment if you're not using your main door, especially if you live in a high-rise building. So if you're, we'll say, even 15 floors up, you have a stairway. Maybe there's a fire escape, at least on one side of the building or another, but not every apartment may have access to that fire escape. So you may have to know route to the fire escape, and sometimes they may be on common areas at the end of a hallway. Should the staircase be blocked, it may be on the opposite side of that. And have a plan. So that should you need to evacuate or vacate your building in an emergency, maybe a fire, an earthquake, or something where it becomes uninhabitable anymore, then you're going to want a way to escape. And if you live, we'll say, in an extremely tall building with maybe one or two, maybe three elevators for, maybe 15, 20, 30 floors of people to use, you're going to be waiting a long time for a ride down. And don't think that everybody else isn't going to be carrying their pets, their bags, suitcases, their bug-out gear when they're ready to leave. So assume that the occupancy is going to be half of what an elevator could normally carry, because people are going to be carrying a lot of stuff out with them. And of course, that goes to your bug-out bag, which you spoke about in previous episodes. So take a look at that. Catch up on that. It should be part of your evacuation plan. And, of course, having a space for that as well. Another challenge in an apartment, but we'll figure something out for that. Now, speaking of people running around with their pets when they're, in a situation when they're leaving, let's do our pet segment. So, of course, if you have a pet, then you really can't forget about them. Even during an emergency, they're going to need to be fed and watered. And they're also going to need to use the bathroom. So you're going to need some way to dispose of the waste. If you're not able to go out, maybe it's not safe to go out. Maybe, there's riots and all that, and you're not able to leave for a couple days sometimes. Well, your doggy's going to need to go, to the bathroom, and so is Kitty. You're going to need to do something with the litter. So, again, we go to, do you have a way to dispose of the waste? Now, in a real fit hits the shan situation, I don't object to just scooping the litter box out and throwing it over the deck onto a bunch of looting marauders, or people that are just trying to burn down my neighborhood. But in normal times, if maybe it's just like a, flood or earthquake, hurricane, storm, major power outage, stuff like that, we may want to be nice to people. So, throwing it out your window to land 15 stories below you in the hopes that they're not going to know where it came from, we'll be nice. We'll play nice. So, you're going to need a way to store or dispose of the waste. And, here you go. You're back to your pool noodle potty, the bucket toilet. So you might want to have that bucket maybe used for a number of things. I guess once you're in an emergency, you may just dump it out on the couch or in a pile in the corner of your apartment so that you use it for something. So make sure it has a good, tight-fitting lid, maybe an extra garbage bag inside to line it with so it's easier to clean. And, you can make sure you have, we'll say, pee pads or whatever they call them for the pet pads for the dogs, and even an extra box of kitty litter. Now, of course, they're going to need to eat. And storage, remember? Yes, wet food is an option, and they may be used to it. But dry food lasts longer than wet food, and believe it or not, it's more compact. So you actually get a lot more food per bag than you would in a can. So think about that when you're out food shopping. And, of course, don't forget, just like your food, you want to rotate their food. We're going to do a quick timeout before we come to the last few tips that I will mention during this week's program. I'm Nick Pierce, the Barefoot Prepper. You're listening to Are You Ready Radio. Here's a short one. We'll be right back.
Find Are You Ready on Facebook and Instagram at Are You Ready Radio. You can also visit our home on the web. Just go to nickpiercemedia.com and click on the program's link. If you missed the live show, you can listen to the show's archives on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Podcasts, CastBox, Deezer, and many more, including our home on Spreaker.
When a disaster happens, are you ready? Do you have the supplies you need to keep you and your family safe and survive? The Zombie Outpost store in Wilmington, Ohio, at Cedar Creek Flea Market stocks quality gear you need to be ready for the next emergency or even a camping trip. Visit zombieoutpoststore.com for location and hours. Check out our assortment of essentials you need when the next disaster happens. Go to zombieoutpoststore.com. Get 10% off at checkout when you mention Are You Ready Radio. Be ready and be prepared.
In this digital society, making connections is quickly becoming a lost art form. Yet, if you are a small business owner, building your network is the only way you can get ahead. Can these skills be learned? You bet they can. Read Nose to Nose Networking. No-nonsense, in-person networking tips from a master. Who's the master? Well, who better to teach networking and friend-building skills than a golden retriever? The author, Melanie Hope, takes the antics of Abigail and translates them into the human experience. Through Abby, you will learn how to set your intention, build a network, and get into and out of conversations with grace. If you love the Dog Abby segments on Counterculture-Wise Radio, you will love Nose to Nose Networking even more. Find it on Amazon and Barnes & Noble in hard copy, Kindle, and Nook. Visit counterculturewise.com for direct links.
Greetings and salutations, Counterculture-Wise listeners. This is Maximilian von Riegelbieser inviting you and yours to listen to me and mine. Join me, my sisters Abby and Fritzy, and my weekly guests, my father Jim and Mumsy Melanie, for Counterculture-Wise.
Max, it's not your show.
And we're not your guests, Max. We're the hosts. You may want to rein it in a little bit, buddy.
Very well. Tune in every Sunday at 6 p.m. Pacific at counterculturewise.com for our amazing live variety show. You can even chat with us. If you ask me, though, it should be called Counterculture Max.
Counterculture Wise. Radio with heart in mind.
If you like what you are listening to, we appreciate your support. A small contribution from you, the listeners, can continue to help bring you such content and help keep things going here, even if it's just $1 a month. Keep in mind, though, in the spirit of prepping, we believe in redundancy, so it's better to have more than one, but every little bit helps pay the bills. Go to nickpiercemedia.com and click on the Support the Show link. You can make a one-time or monthly contribution in any dollar amount. And again, thank you for your support and listening. You are listening to Are You Ready Radio with Nick Pierce, the Barefoot Prepper. Okay, and we're back. Coming down the home stretch here. Just a little bit more information on this midweek prepping session and prepping lesson, whatever you want to call it. I'm Nick Pierce, the Barefoot Prepper. Of course, this is Are You Ready? I'm hoping that's why you're here. So, what else do we have that we need for your apartment prepping? Now, of course, people are probably out there thinking, what about first aid, medical first aid? Well, you should already have that in your apartment already. Of course, maybe having a couple extra things for beyond the small cut and scrape if you can't get to, we'll say, an emergency room. It's really going to depend on your skills, though. And, of course, like all gear, depending on what you use, is going to depend on your skills. But most importantly, really when it comes to first aid, because, again, you're living in your apartment still. You're just surviving through the lack of, we'll say, electricity or water or civil unrest outside, and you can't go anywhere for an extended period of time. So there are, you are going to be in your home, and you should already have a simple first aid kit at least, but then maybe expanding it to beyond that. Do some research. One great book I want to recommend to you is called Where There Is No Doctor. And I think there's also another book Where There Is No Dentist. I think they're written by the same folks, or it's like kind of like a sister book to it. But Where There Is No Doctor is probably one of the best books on my reading list when it comes to some of the books for prepping. But for medical emergencies and all that, I mean, it really goes way out full scale. From simple stuff all the way to, different diseases, different procedures and all that. So Where There Is No Doctor, I'm trying to remember the author now, but see if you can find it. And you can do a simple search, and I'll probably put some links like this on our social media to recommend to you as well. And I do want to start eventually carrying these in the store, so keep an eye out for them. I'm hopefully going to have them available soon once we can get some decent pricing on small quantity books. But as far as first aid, again, it depends on your skill. So do some research. Learn a little more first aid than probably just treating minor scrapes, cuts, and burns. Know what to do for larger medical emergencies where you may not be able to get to an emergency room, hospital, doctor, urgent care, anything like that. So, again, it's based on your skill. Eventually, maybe you want to learn how to do sutures and get a couple sets of sutures, maybe a little minor surgical kit, to go beyond just the general, scrape, cut, minor burn. So, you may want to expand your first aid kit, but again, you should have everything already. So, of course, now you have an idea of the amount of space that's going to take up based on what you need. But another question I get asked a lot is, well, how much is all this going to cost? It's really hard to put a price tag on how much prepping is going to cost. But you figure, on average, just for yourself, and I know this number may sound big, but to get good quality stuff, equipment and gear that you need, plus a good reserve of food and water, you're looking somewhere between $500 to $800. It sounds like a big number, but it's not much at all. Another tip, someone mentioned in a chat, not in the Spreaker chat, but on the Messenger, is you're talking about putting propane canisters in your apartment, and buildings don't like that. You shouldn't store propane canisters inside. Well, that is a good point. They're fairly stable. Now, number one. Number two, it's a very small amount. And I get it. No matter how much of an explosive combustible gas compressed you may have, it could turn into a big problem. And you're right. Of course, store it responsibly. Now, If some apartments may have issues against that. So again, out of sight, out of mind. You don't want it to be someplace out in the open. It really doesn't pose too much of a danger, but it could. So I'm not going to say everybody's safe. I'm sure my legal team is going to get on me about that. But some apartments may rent storage in their basement. It may be okay to store in some apartment buildings propane and fuel canisters down there. Sometimes they don't object to it, and they recommend that you do that. Definitely check with your landlord, management company, maintenance, anything like that, to see if maybe they do rent out small portions of like cellar space, basement space, or even attic space to tenants in the building, where they do allow to store certain things, and then put that rented space to work for you. If you're already paying for it, even if it's just for a small additional fee, sometimes they may not mind at all. But for a small fee, some landlords may rent out basement space, or it may be already divided up to be rented, and you may have a spot down there to store things like bikes, outdoor equipment, maybe camping gear and all that you would typically store in a garage. Some landlords may offer that in a basement. That space may be available, and you can expand your prepping even beyond your apartment then. Of course, you don't want to put anything of any value or something that could be looted, stolen, or something when a real emergency happens. But at least it'll free up space in your main living area to put the valuable preps that you may need. One point before we run out of time that I did want to add to how much it costs to prep. Again, that's a number for an apartment. Small amount, not really, extremely long term. And with that number, you could also pretty much get some of those like MREs or like those dehydrated trail, Wise Foods. There's a number of them, Patriot Food, a ton of different brands out there when it comes to dehydrated MRE type meals. So just keep that in mind. But now once you put that investment in, okay, you're going to have quality gear that's not going to go bad. But for anything that is expendable, you're pretty much looking at an average cost between, I'm going to say, $40 to $70 a year just to maintain your stockpile and supply. So once you put the initial investment into some of the food and water, spread out over the course of how long that food is good for, you're not replacing it all every year. You're looking at about maybe $70, $80 tops. I can't imagine it being any more than that. Just in restocking, replenishing, rotating, switching batteries out if they go bad. So just keep that in mind. Well, I hope that I helped you seriously think, prepare, and answer the question, are you ready? I'm Nick Pierce, the Barefoot Prepper. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in and the support you give the show. Our guests, the callers, our friends in chat, listeners, clients, customers, everybody at the store, everything. Find Are You Ready on Facebook and Instagram at Are You Ready Radio. You can also find us on the web at nickpiercemedia.com. Click on the program's link. Find us on your favorite podcast platforms and on our home on Spreaker. To contribute to the show, go to Nick Pierce Media and click on the Support the Show link. Are You Ready Radio is the official podcast of Zombie Outpost in Wilmington, Ohio, and is an NP Media Group production.